The year is 2006, and Dennis Setzer's coming off his third consecutive runner up points finish in 2005 after getting 4 wins the previous year and falling just 55 points shy of hoisting the championship trophy. However, the season Truck Series veteran would fall off drastically in 2006. A rebranding to the number 85 to promote the sponsorship of ethanol E85 didn't help at all, and Setzer had to wait until the 15th race of the season to get what would be his only top 5 on the year, and he's coming off a season that saw him challenge for multiple wins week in and week out. Setzer ended the 2006 season 13th in the standings with that one top 5, 11 top 10s, and an average finish of 13.4 with just 83 laps led. However, Setzer wasn't the only athlete in the sports world that was disgruntled about where he was at. Across 7 seasons playing for the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL, Randy Moss had proven to be one of the most electrifying receivers and electrifying players in NFL history, scoring well over 1,000 receiving yards in his first 6 years before dipping a little bit in 2004 due to injury, and leading the league in touchdown receptions in 98, 2000, and 2003. However, Moss was traded in 2005 to the Oakland Raiders, and Moss struggled, only barely cracking over 1,000 receiving yards in the final game of the season as the Raiders missed the playoffs. And the following year in 2006, he struggled immensely, barely cracking 500 receiving yards across 13 games and only grabbing 8 touchdown catches. And Moss was not happy about playing for the Raiders. He had many drop passes, and it seemed like he was just not putting a lot of effort. And many times he publicly said that he wanted to leave Oakland and was not happy playing for them and really wanted to be traded. Unlike Dennis Setzer, who would taper off the rest of his NASCAR career driving for Spears, Bobby Hamilton, and a slew of other teams, Randy Moss achieved a career renaissance. Being traded to the New England Patriots for a fourth round draft pick in 2007 saw Moss be a part of what was probably the most overpowered team in NFL history, with the Patriots going 16-0 and Moss being named comeback player of the year with nearly 1,500 receiving yards and an NFL record 23 touchdown catches. After such a resurgence in performance, Randy Moss decided to not just eye football for the 2008 season, he decided to check out another organization that was struggling. Morgan-Dollar Motorsports had fallen on hard times since Dennis Setzer left the team after the dismal 2006 season he had, struggling with a slew of drivers such as Craig Kinzer, Regan Smith, and Eric Almirola across the 2007 season. And in 2008, it didn't fare much better with drivers such as Aaron Crocker, Scott Speed, and Eric Almirola as well. Again, just not having mediocre runs in the truck. And Randy Moss decided to help them out. This is when the most electrifying player in NFL history owned a NASCAR team. Morgan-Dollar Motorsports had reduced their schedule to a part-time effort with drivers Willie Allen and development driver Landon Castle for most of the 2008 season. But in the middle of another 1,000-yard campaign, Randy Moss announced that he would buy 50% of Morgan-Dollar Motorsports, and the team would rename the name of the team to Randy Moss Motorsports, changing the name of the truck from number 46 to his number 81 that he used in the NFL. The team would make their debut with Willie Allen, who was coming off a Rookie of the Year award in 2007 after a full season in the Thor Sport 13 truck, and he brought sponsorship from the Rascal Flatts band. Yeah, the band that sings the Life is a Highway song. Yeah, he brought them in, and for race number 13 at Kentucky, it would be the first race for Randy Moss Motorsports as a team, where Willie Allen would bring the truck home to a 15th place finish. Development driver Landon Castle would eventually drive the truck the following race at IRP, where he was able to get a top 10 in the 7th position. Allen would come back for the following race at Nashville, where he would run mediocre all day and finish in 27th, before Randy Moss, like the crazy electrifying splurgeon he is, he decided to make a splurge on a big driver. For the following race at Bristol, Randy Moss was able to sign then two-time defending NASCAR Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson to make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut for that race at Bristol. Johnson had never made a race in the Truck Series up to that point, and this would actually go on to be his only Truck Series start for most of his career until 2026, when he'll race for Tricon in the San Diego Naval Base. This would go on to be the best race for Randy Moss's short tenure at the time as a team owner, as Johnson would run up front early on in the race and would lead 29 laps, but unfortunately would crash just after lap 100, forcing him to finish all the way back in the 34th position. It was a good showing for the young team, and for the following race at Gateway, they would hire development driver Mark Davis for Joe Gibbs Racing to run for them, where he had a pretty respectable race. For the rest of the season, however, Randy Moss's team would end up signing Donnie Leah, who was coming off a win at Mansfield early on in the season, had just been let go from his team at TRG Motorsports, and the team hired him to drive the 81 truck for the remainder of the season. The only thing they missed was the only race they missed was at Talladega, where they decided to not opt running in that race. But in those 7 races that Leah ran in the team, he had 5 top 20s, which included a best finish of 10th at Las Vegas, and Leah ended up finishing 18th in the final driver standings. In the 13 races ran that year for Randy Moss Motorsports across 5 different drivers, they got 2 top 10s in those 13 starts, and Jimmy Johnson led 29 laps for the team. The average finish was in the middle of the road, as Castle's average finish was a 10.0, Mark Davis's was 16th for finishing 16th at Gateway, Johnson was 34.0, Donnie Leah's 7 starts saw him with an average finish of 18.6, so things were looking up for the young team. After getting his feet wet, Randy Moss decided that he was going to make a stab for the full season championship for the first time in 2009 after making select starts in 2008. So in 2009, he was going to finally splash out. With being a Toyota team, the 81 truck would be driven full-time by rookie Tayler Malsam, who had made 2 starts the prior year for Bill Davis and Cunningham Motorsports. But Bill Davis Racing shut down at the end of 2008. Despite winning the championship with Johnny Benson in their 23 truck, their other truck, the number 5, would actually be bought by Randy Moss. Moss expanded his operation to a 2-truck full-time effort, and they decided to retain the number 5 and the driver from that team. And this is the driver that made headlines for Randy Moss in 2009. Driving alongside Tayler Malsam would be series veteran and inaugural 1995 series champion Mike Skinner. This looked to be an insane combination. Skinner was coming off 9 wins since the 2005 season and nearly won the championship in 2007 had it not been for a axle failure in the final race. With the series veteran that was still performing really strong in the truck series, with the rookie that he could mentor alongside him in Tayler Malsam, this team looked to be a force to be reckoned with heading into 2009. The 2009 season would start off strong for Randy Moss Motorsports. In the opening race at Daytona, Skinner was able to come home in 7th, while Tayler Malsam was able to come home in 10th. And while Malsam struggled to reach the top 10 over the next 4 races, Skinner did not disappoint. And 11th at California was the sole low point, if you could even call it that, because strong runs at Atlanta and Martinsville, where he finished inside the top 5 in both events, saw Skinner really high up in the points before they went to Kansas for his 5th race of the season, where Mike Skinner showed that he was going to be the dominant truck on the day, qualifying up front, taking the lead early, and although the race was hounded by weather through multiple days and eventually ending in a rain-shortened win, it was Randy Moss's first win as a team owner, with Skinner leading 67 of the 132 laps on the day. Randy Moss was finally a NASCAR winner after Mike Skinner went to get the victory. Tayler Malsam had a respectable race as well, finishing in 11th, and the following race, where Skinner would unfortunately crash out in an insane crash with TJ Bell, Malsam was able to get his second top 10 of the season, being in 8th place, and Malsam continued to contend for consistent top 15s for the majority of the season, while the next 3 races saw Skinner finish 8th at Dover, 10th at Texas, and 5th at Michigan. Skinner was performing really strong and comfortably inside the top 10 points and battling to stay inside the top 5. After a mediocre 19th place finish at Milwaukee, where Malsam was able to get his 3rd consecutive top 10, finishing 7th after previously finishing 9th and 6th in the previous 2 races, the two drivers were solid this season. They were consistent. No one was really running bad. They only had 1 bad race at Charlotte, where Randy Moss's truck and Mike Skinner got pretty much destroyed by TJ Bell. Skinner stayed inside the top 10 points for the entire season, and the only race where he wasn't inside the top 5 was after that 11th place run at California in race number 2 of the season. In Kentucky, though, he had a strong run and was able to finish in 2nd, but the following race at IRP saw him have another dominant run, starting 2nd on the day and leading 61 laps, but unfortunately finishing runner-up, this time to Ron Hornaday, who was getting 1 million wins in a row. This would be his 4th consecutive win And that meant Skinner needed to start stepping up if he wanted to catch Hornaday. Hornaday was just rocketing away with all these wins consecutively, and Hornaday would end up getting a fifth straight after winning at Nashville, where Skinner would unfortunately only finish in 17th, while Malsam was getting 7th at IRP and 9th at Nashville. A 31st at Bristol was the first finish for Tayler Malsam outside of the top 16 since California. But luckily, just a few races later, even though Skinner was struggling to finish inside the top 15 for the following three races, it all came together at Iowa, where Malsam was able to etch out a top 10. But Randy Moss was able to get his first career pole because Mike Skinner was able to get the pole for the race. And at Iowa, after starting from the pole, Mike Skinner dominated, leading 180 of the 200 laps to go on to get his second win of the season. And the following race at Gateway was able to go back to back to get his 28th career Truck Series win and his third on the season. And Skinner was able to jump all the way to third in the standings through this stretch. And at New Hampshire, the following race, he was able to get his second pole in the season, leading 16 laps and finishing in eighth. While Malsam was still running strong, but unfortunately lost some inconsistency as they headed to the end of the season. 5th at Gateway, 20th at New Hampshire, 10th at Las Vegas, 2 crashes at Martinsville and Talladega, and limped out the season with 3 top 20s to end up ending out the season 12th in the standings with 1 top 5, 10 top 10s, only 13 laps led, and an average finish of 14.5. Skinner was not able to get the championship as, although he had a third pole at Martinsville, he ended the season with 3 consecutive top 10s and ended the 2009 season with 3 wins, 8 top 5s, 17 top 10s, 3 poles, 408 laps led, and a third place points finish with an average finish of 9.3. And that was Skinner's best points finish. That wasn't the runner-up he had in 2007. That was his best points finish since he came back to the Truck Series in 2004. And with a driver finishing inside the podium positions in the standings with 3 wins and a rookie showing lots of promise and consistency, it looked like it was only going to go up in 2010 because Moss followed up that 2008 season where he had 1,000 yards. In 2009, he led the NFL in touchdowns at 13 and had nearly 1,300 receiving yards as the Patriots ended up winning the division going 10-6. However, with Moss having contract issues with the New England Patriots heading into the 2010 season, it left his race team in an odd state because after 2009, it looked like their team that they were going to have for a few years that would improve drastically started to fall apart at the seams. Tayler Malsam left for the newly formed Kyle Busch Motorsports in their 56 truck to drive full time, and Skinner's crew chief Eric Phillips left for Kyle Busch Motorsports as well and was replaced by engineer Stacy Johnson. So this new fresh foundation from Skinner working with Eric Phillips and helping Tayler Malsam improve drastically after becoming just running in the middle of the pack to now challenging for consistent top 10s, it looked like they just destroyed the little foundation that they had built upon that seemed sturdy enough. Alongside the returning Skinner in the 5 truck, the 81 truck would be driven by veteran David Starr, who was coming from HT Motorsports and bringing part-time sponsorship from Zachary. And unfortunately for Randy Moss Motorsports, unlike 2009, 2010 would actually start off with a bit of a rough beginning. After leading a few laps and being involved in a crash just after the halfway point, Skinner was finishing in the 24th position at Daytona, which he followed up with a 14th place finish at Atlanta and a 27th place finish at Martinsville despite qualifying inside the top 5 and leading 15 laps on the day. While David Starr unfortunately didn't rack up a single top 10 through the first 4 races with the best finish of 15th at Atlanta. Luckily, those were all top 20s, but he was struggling to even get to the top 10 in points, while Malsam the year before was battling inside the top 10 points for most of the season, and Skinner was, we all know, ended up finishing 3rd in points on the season. That race at Nashville saw Skinner's first top 10 of the season, and he was sitting solidly 13th in points while he was just 1 spot ahead of his teammate David Starr. And the following race at Kansas would finally see a turnaround, with both drivers getting a top 10, Skinner in 8th and David Starr finishing in 10th for his first top 10 of the season, and would be a start of a streak for David Starr, as he would go on to get a best finish of 6th at Dover the next race, then a 9th at Charlotte, and although he crashed out at Texas, he got 2 more top 10s in a row at Michigan and Iowa. And after the 10th race, Starr was sitting solidly 8th in the standings, and across those races as well, Skinner finished 8th at Dover, 6th at Charlotte, got his first top 5 at Texas, finishing 4th, and a 12th at Michigan, as well as a 7th at Iowa, where he was sitting 6th in points and finally led laps for the first time since Martinsville at 13 at Iowa. He was struggling to get into the top 10 points for most of the early part of the season, but now was solidly in it in the 6th position. This would be the beginning of a very slow decline for Randy Moss's organization, however, as even though Skinner was able to jump inside the top 5 in points after a 10th place finish at Gateway, he quickly fell outside of it after only getting 1 top 10 across the next 4 races, which included a crash at Darlington that left him in 22nd. And at Bristol, Skinner would go on to have his best race of the 2010 season so far, starting in 8th, leading 53 laps, and going on to finish in 4th. Unfortunately, in that race, David Starr had his first crash since Texas, and across the 5 races before that, he had 5 consecutive top 15s, which included a top 10 at IRP where he finished in 9th. But unfortunately, after that Bristol race, Randy Moss Motorsports announced that they had to shut down that 81 truck immediately due to a lack of funding. Unfortunately for Starr, he was sitting comfortably 9th in the standings despite his truck being shut down, and would find a home at SS Greenlight for the remainder of the season, where for the rest of the year, he never finished worse than 15th and included 3 top 10s in that stretch, which was 9 races, and he would go on to finish 9th in points. Things looked bleak for the rest of the season as Skinner struggled after the Bristol race, not finishing inside the top 10 for the next 4 races, and at Las Vegas, where Skinner finished 24th, Tayler Malsam, who had been released from Kyle Busch Motorsports earlier in the season, was signed to drive for Randy Moss's Motorsports. They were going to bring a part-time second truck to race in selective events for the rest of the 2010 season, starting at Las Vegas, where Malsam would finish in 13th. He would miss Martinsville and Talladega, but would go on to drive the last 3 races of the season, where he would get a 10th place finish at Homestead. However, Skinner just limped the rest of the season out, although the final 5 races of the season saw him score 4 top 10s in the final 5 races, with the exception being a 15th at Talladega. Skinner would only have 2 top 5s and 13 top 10s, and only led 93 laps on the season with an average finish of 12.0 and dipped to 8th in the final standings, 1 spot ahead of David Starr, who at the team when he was driving in the 81 truck managed 6 top 10s, which include 5 in a span of 6 races and a grand total of 9 total top 10s to finish 9th in the final standings despite ending the season at SS Greenlight, while Tayler Malsam in his 4 races in the 25 truck part-time got a top 10 at Bristol and overall finished 23rd in points, having missed most of the season after getting dumped from Kyle Busch Motorsports. Yet you have to imagine that Moss's struggles in the NFL in 2010 also played a role into how his NASCAR team performed, as he was dumped by the Patriots, or not dumped, traded by the Patriots just 4 weeks into the season to the Minnesota Vikings, and overall played for 3 separate franchises across the 2010 season, getting under 500 receiving yards and only managing 5 touchdown catches. It seemed like just a little bump in the road, though, because after the 2010 season, despite Moss not performing so well, he would announce his retirement from the NFL after multiple years in the league. So with having the ability to focus on his NASCAR team for the 2011 season, things should improve, right? So with a fresh, clean slate, Randy Moss Motorsports announced 2 full-time entries for the 2011 season. Tayler Malsam, after driving in select starts in their 25 truck at the end of 2010, would be driving full-time in the same number for 2011. However, their main 5 truck was going to be a bit of a mystery because Mike Skinner would leave the team after the 2010 season after an 8th place points finish due to lack of chemistry after losing his crew chief the previous year, and the team struggling with sponsorship, with Exide leaving the team following 2010's disappointing season. His replacement would be 2003 Truck Series champion Travis Kvapil. As we could see here, Randy Moss is going the route of looking for a veteran that had a lot of experience, and Travis Kvapil, with 9 career Truck Series wins to his credit and the 2003 championship, it looked like it was going to be a good signing. Although it hadn't been since 2007 that Kvapil last ran a full Truck Series season, he'd been driving subpar cars in the Cup Series for the last few years. So with Kvapil driving the 5 full-time in 2011 and Tayler Malsam full-time in the 25, let's see what was going to happen in the 2011 season. The team would not get off on the greatest foot, however, as at Daytona, Tayler Malsam unfortunately missed the field, and Travis Kvapil, while running up front toward the end of the race, unfortunately lost a tire and caused the big one toward the end of the race, and he wouldn't finish the following race at Phoenix, where Tayler Malsam again failed to qualify. He was able to make his first race of the season at Darlington, but unfortunately after an engine failure that left him 29th, the team would end up shutting down the 25 truck just 3 races into the season, while Kvapil would be the one continuing on for the organization, getting his first finish at the team by finishing 17th at Darlington. But unfortunately, Kvapil in this 5 truck was just mediocre. He wasn't running up front, not nearly as well as Skinner, even when Skinner wasn't running as good as he was, like in, say, 2010. But Kvapil slowly improved, finally getting an 11th place finish at Charlotte to get inside the top 15, and following it up with a top 10 by finishing 10th at Kansas, a 12th at Texas, and after finishing 10th for his second top 10 of the season at Kentucky, he finally was able to jump inside the top 20 in points and was sitting 18th in the standings with an average finish of 18.8. However, Moss's team saw an opportunity. Despite Kvapil sitting 18th in points coming off his second top 10 of the season, the defending two-time Truck Series champion Todd Bodine had just been let go from his Germain Racing 30 truck because of lack of sponsorship while sitting 11th in the standings. The team would take advantage of this by getting into a merger with Germain Racing to have them field the number 5 truck out of their shop using Randy Moss Motorsports equipment for the rest of the 2011 season. This would mean that Travis Kvapil was unfortunately fired despite coming off his second top 10 of the season, and Bodine would run the rest of the season driving the 5 truck. Bodine was struggling immensely across his second championship defense season in 2010. In the first 10 races with the Germain 30 truck, only managed 3 top 10s and 3 DNFs and was sitting outside the top 10 in points. But when he came into race 11 at Iowa, he was looking to have a good run in this new merged truck between Germain and RMM. And he started off his first 2 races with the team with a 10th at Iowa and a 6th at Nashville. And he came across a 3-race streak of finishing 12th or 11th and solidly jumped inside the top 10 points, leading a handful of laps. But he would go on to have arguably his best race of the 2011 season at Bristol, qualifying 9th, which was predicated by qualifying a season-best 2nd at Michigan. And at Bristol, even though he didn't lead any laps, he was able to finish inside the top 5. And at Atlanta, he was able to finish 9th after qualifying subpar. And at Chicagoland, he led 14 laps during the pit cycle and finished 13th, which was followed by a 4-race streak of finishing 8th or better, an 8th at Loudon, 7th at Kentucky, a 5th at Las Vegas, and a 6th at Talladega, with a handful of laps led across all those races. And he would end the final 3 races of the 2011 season with an 11th at Martinsville, 13th at Texas, and a 16th at Homestead. Bodine had a respectable run in the 5 truck, as across the 16 races he was driving the 5 truck, he managed 2 top 5s and 8 top 10s, which was more than the 3 top 5s and 3 top 10s he had in the 30 truck, and he led 29 laps in those 16 races, which was better than the 11 he had led in the 30 truck. And remember, he's coming off one of the most dominant championship seasons in Truck Series history, and in the 16 races he drove in the 5 truck, he was able to get an average finish of 9.5. Across the 2011 season, he was able to end out the year 6th in points, and although he went winless, he had a grand total of 5 top 5s and 11 top 10s. So across 2011, Travis Kvapil ran 10 races for the team, getting 2 top 10s, and for the remaining 16 races, Bodine managed 2 top 5s and 8 top 10s, meaning the 5 truck as a whole got 2 top 5s and 10 top 10s, and a grand total of 29 laps led, all from Bodine, because Travis didn't lead a single lap in the 10 races he was in the 5 truck. We cannot also ignore the fact that Tayler Malsam tried to run the full season in the 25 truck, but only made 1 of 3 starts, and he didn't even finish that race at Darlington before the team shut down. Todd Bodine would leave Randy Moss Motorsports after the 2011 season, even though they didn't do that bad as a whole across the year, because they were struggling due to lack of sponsorship and the performance wasn't really there, and they were still looking for that 2009 Mike Skinner performance, and Bodine would leave to another team that was also struggling with sponsorship, Red Horse Racing, but they seemed to have a better foundation with Timothy Peters driving their main truck. And with the offseason before the year 2012 went around, nobody knew what Randy Moss Motorsports was doing after their strange year in 2011, even though they didn't perform that bad. But on February 8th, 2012, after somebody on Twitter asked what Randy Moss Motorsports was doing, Ray Dunlap, a series reporter, ended up posting this tweet as a reply to this guy saying that they had sold their equipment, locked their building, and the team was defunct. To finally put in the dagger, Randy Moss would announce that he would come out of retirement to join the NFL for one last season in 2012, trying to get one Super Bowl ring. He would sign with the juggernaut in the NFC, being the San Francisco 49ers, and Moss hadn't made a Super Bowl since 2007, where in his only appearance they unfortunately lost the New York Giants despite being completely overpowered that season. The 49ers were strong that season, getting the one seed in the NFC by going 11-4-1, but Moss performed as well as you thought he would for being age 35. Moss would get 28 catches on the season for 434 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns across the 16 games that year, where he started in 2, but he never got more than 4 catches in a game, and on average usually got 1 to 2. Sometimes he would squeak out a third. But he was consistent catching most of those passes and hovering around the 20 to 30 receiving mark in those games. But because the 49ers had an 11-4-1 record, they were able to secure the 1 seed in the NFC, sending Moss to the playoffs for the first time since the 2009 season. The Niners would play their first playoff game against the overwhelming favorite Green Bay Packers in the divisional round, where they were able to upset them by winning 45-31, and Moss caught 2 passes for 25 yards. And in the conference championship game, this isn't hockey or basketball, the NFC championship game, Moss was able to catch 3 passes for 46 yards and advance to his second career Super Bowl. The 49ers would go against the defensive-heavy Baltimore Ravens, and in a very close, classic game, Moss was able to catch 2 passes for 41 yards, but unfortunately the Niners would fall short 34-31, handing Moss his second L in the big game. And he would ride off, not into the sunset, he would ride off again into a second retirement, this time for good, after one last shot at trying to get a championship. The equipment from Randy Moss Motorsports would eventually be bought by former crew chief Richie Waters, which he used to form his own team, Waters Motorsports, another truck series team that would only last a handful of years. But when Randy Moss was a 50% owner of the truck series, with the other owner being the former main owner of Morgan-Dollar Motorsports, remember, this is a team that had championship aspirations from 2003 to 2005. And when Moss came around, they started off hot. In 2008, in their first part-time races, they had 2 top 10s across 5 different drivers, which included handing Jimmy Johnson his first career Truck Series start, en route to having a full season in 2009 with 1995 Series champion Mike Skinner and a promising young rookie in Tayler Malsam. And those two had strong seasons, with Skinner getting the team their first and what would be their only 3 wins and 3 poles, 8 top 5s, 17 top 10s, an average finish of 9.3, and finished third in points, while Malsam, although he had 1 top 5 and 10 top 10s, he was consistent as ever with an average finish of 14.5 and finished 12th in points. But as quickly as their peak came, as quick was their decline as well. It was slow but sturdy as well, as Mike Skinner in 2010 only managed 2 top 5s and 13 top 10s and fell to 8th in points with an average finish of 12th, while their second truck in David Starr, who was as consistent as ever, was let go after the team had to shut down their second truck due to a lack of funding. Starr was able to end out the season just behind Skinner in points, finishing out the season with SS Greenlight. Malsam made 4 races trying to get back to a bigger schedule after getting let go by his former team and only managed 1 top 10. And in 2011, Skinner would leave, Eric Phillips had already left, and the chemistry was already gone. Moss's team decided to sign another former champion in Travis Quapple, who in 10 races only managed 2 top 10s and could barely get inside the top 20 in points, and they tried to have a second truck full time, but the team only made 1 race out of 3 attempts and subsequently shut down. Todd Bodine and Germain Racing would have to merge their operation with Randy Moss Motorsports just to fill out the rest of the season, where Bodine managed 8 top 10s, 2 top 5s, an average finish of 9.5 in those 16 races, and finished 6th in the standings. But again, this era in the Truck Series was so dependent on sponsorship, and even though you guys won the championship, there were many drivers in this era that struggled with sponsorship. Ron Hornaday struggled with sponsorship, Todd Bodine struggled with sponsorship, Mike Skinner struggled with sponsorship, Johnny Benson even struggled with sponsorship, as he was let go just a few races into his championship defense in 2009. And unfortunately, just mediocre performance did them in, as after just a few seasons in the series, Randy Moss Motorsports in 119 races across 4 years, not including the 16 races Todd Bodine ran in 2011, because those are really officially counted as Germain Racing entries and it's not on Racing Reference. And across those 119 races, Randy Moss Motorsports managed 3 wins, 11 top 5s, 51 top 10s, 3 poles, 546 laps led, and a career average finish of 13.7. Randy Moss wasn't the first NFL player to own a NASCAR team, but majority of the owners before him decided to embark on this endeavor of owning a NASCAR team well after they retired from the NFL. Moss was really the first big player that decided to make this trip to own a NASCAR team while playing in the league, and he was still performing fairly strong when he opened up the team in 2008 and was really competitive really until the 2010 season. But with Moss's weird jumping around, bouncing from team to team in 2010 and subsequently retiring, and after the mediocrity they had in 2011, he would unretire, and since he wanted to make one last Super Bowl push, the team would eventually shut down and would lose its remains. But this is still one of the most interesting stories how Randy Moss owned a NASCAR team. I hope you guys like this video. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.